Hey, Terry Caliendo, Dedicated Managers here, and I am working on a project right now with a multi-camera video edit. So I need to relay this information to a colleague of how I'm setting things up. So I figured I'd do a video about it for him as well as for the rest of the world. So just to give you a lay of the land here, I have a podcast that was recorded, and there are 4 different cameras and one set of microphones that has 1, 2, plus 4, 6 microphones recorded. So I've got 6 microphones recorded. They're all synced up, which is nice, via a Zoom H6 device. That's this bad boy right here. This top part was taken out and 2 microphones were put in, and then there's more microphones on the sides here. So this thing was recording 6 microphones, and it drops its files into this directory or into a directory on a SD card that we imported here. So that's my file structure for the H6, and then we've got a couple of cameras. I don't have the model numbers right offhand, but we bought 6 actually cheap cameras that record to SD cards, not the best quality, but just needed 6 cameras. They are all the same, which I think makes our lives easier. Every single one of these cameras is the same make and model, so that I think it's easier for the time code to line up and not change. You should have, a good experience with different cameras, but different models or different makes. But if you use the same one for everything, I think you're going to have a better experience. And that's what we did. So the thing that I haven't seen people talk about in creating videos, though, is that the camera, when it hits about 4.1, 4.2 gigs, it stops recording on a file and starts a new file. And I assume that's for old backwards Windows compatibility rather than giving you a 4, 8, 9, somewhere around a 10 gigabyte file. It gives you 3 continuous files. And so this file, you can see this is one setting here. I'm doing this remotely, but that was one time. This is that same camera angle, but it's the second half hour or whatever, or hour. And we'll see that when I import it into the system. So every single one of these cameras is going to have 3 files, and they do not sync up. They do not start at the exact same time. We're going to have to sync them up. Same with the H6. We're going to have to sync everything up. But within the folder, this file, if I put it right at the end of this file, it will sync up perfectly. There's no space or anything between them. So these 3 will be put in one long line to become a single continuous file. So the first thing I need to do, I have a blank project here. So the first thing I need to do is start importing my camera angles. So I'm going to make a new bin, and I'm going to call it raw. And then I'm going to make another new bin, and I'm going to call it camera 1. And then I'm going to take camera 1 files, and I'm going to stick them in there. Okay, and now that's going to conform those files. And I'm going to do the same thing for the next 4 cameras, and then I'll come back. All right, so you can see I imported all the different directories. I've got camera 1 through camera 4, and each of them is in a bin or a directory within my project file here. And so they just, they come in like that. The next thing to do is to create a new bin and import the Zoom H6. So I'll grab those files. I only want to grab the WAV files. These PKF files are because I opened them in Adobe Audition, and it just creates those peak files so it can quickly see the rendered view. So there you go. I've got my audio files. That's my 6 different microphones that were on the podcast. And then the podcast, this one only had 4 cameras. Usually we do 5 or 6, but this one only had 4. It's the same thing. You just add more cameras. If you were doing, a larger camera shoot. So now we got to do what most people will tell you to do, or is to take your files and create a multi-camera sequence from it. But we're not going to do that yet because we don't have camera 1 is not a full sequence yet. We don't know how to line everything up. So now we have to go and create a new bin, and we're going to call this timelines. And so Now I'm going to take camera 1 and I'm going to pull it over here, and that's going to automatically create a new timeline sequence. I should probably call that sequences. I call them timelines because I'm from the 1980s. And so I'm going to call this camera 1, and I'm going to move it up here to the timelines where I'm going to keep all my timelines. And now camera 1 has this 028. I realize I'm doing this on a screen that's very hard to see probably. I apologize for that. It's too late to redo it. So hopefully you can zoom in. Maybe I'll redo this at some point if I ever actually get some time. So I'm just going to grab that second file. So that's 28. This is 29. And like I said, they will patch linearly. So the end of that file is now the start of this file. And if I zoom in, it's continuous. It's not like there's any jumps or anything. So we're crossing. If you look at the boundary here, and then you look up here, as I cross the boundary, nothing changes. There's no glitches. So that's an exact matchup of that file. And then I take that last one, put it on there. So now I've created that timeline. This timeline is these 3 video files all in one, so that entire camera's recording is all now in one timeline and one thing that I can import into the multi-camera shoot. So I'm going to close that camera 1, and then I'm going to be done with camera 1, and now I'm going to do the same thing with camera 2. I'm going to take camera 2, and I'm going to match its files up, line them up so that now I have one continuous timeline of camera 2. And I'm going to take camera 2 and put it up in my timelines, and then I'm going to be done with it. So I'll do that with the other 2, and I'll be back. All right, so I have now my 4 different cameras here, which I have are these 4 cameras. So I'm done with the raw for the cameras. Now I have to do a zoom one, and I don't just want to. Actually, I probably could do this. The way I've been doing it is what I'll do, rather than taking here and creating a new timeline that has this timeline is going to have the specs of this audio source. And I've found, I don't know if I need to do this, but what I've been doing is I take one of my video files. Remember, all these cameras are the same. So if I take this video file, I've now created a sequence that uses the parameters, the bit rate and the timeline, the frames per second and whatnot of this camera. So now I'm just going to delete this camera out of here, and I'm going to take my 6 audio files, and I'm going to put them in track 1. That's going to be the left, track 2, and then we're going to start with, or that's left and right, and now it's track 1, and then track 2. Now I've run out of things here, so if I just put it at the bottom, it just creates a new audio timeline. So there's my 6 audio sources all brought in. So now I don't even have to sync them. I could right click this and choose synchronize, and Adobe will do its best to synchronize them, especially if you put some claps in there, which we did at some point. They didn't do it right away, but somewhere in here there's some spikes that line up by claps. I'll try and find that maybe in a little bit. I'm probably going to need to find them actually to synchronize it later. So, but I know that these are all synchronized up if I go and play it.
Very much so interesting.
It's each microphone of 6 different people, and you're not going to hear any echoes or anything. They're all going to be lined up automatically. That's what the H6 does for you. So the Zoom H6 records all those tracks, and they all start at exactly the same point, so that when I bring them in, they're all synchronized. Now they are not synchronized to the video though. So, first I have to I got to rename this timeline that I created, the sequence, to the Zoom H6 track, and then I'm going to move it up here into my timelines or my sequences. And now I'm done with the raw. That was just to import. Now I've got everything I need here. So I'm going to take these 6, and I'm going to right click, and I am going to close that out. Shoot, I think I closed the whole timeline thing. What did I do here? I'll have to fix that. Hang on. I had to go to Window. timeline, and that brought that back. I didn't want to close that out. So here's my timelines. I guess that's why I call it timeline. These are sequences, so I guess I'm goofed up. Anyway, so what you would do if you were doing a single camera edit, you'd bring this over here and you'd have this timeline, and you could bring other cameras into it and mix between the two. But we're going to do a multi-camera edit, so I'm going to delete that so that I'm just back to these timelines. I'm going to choose all 6 of them. And now I've had problems in the past where the H6 won't line up with the camera sequence. In fact, actually, I'm not even going to put it in here. I'm just going to create a multi-camera sequence out of those 4. And there's lots of videos on how to do this, but we are just going to use channel 1 of the audio source, which is a stereo audio source. We don't need to do any mixing down. They should be getting pretty much the same thing. So we're going to use channel 1 of the audio sources for each one of these cameras. And I am not going to move the sequences to a source bin. That always annoys me when it does that. Just create a new clip for me. And the audio is going to come from camera 1, which is fine with me because I'm not actually going to use the camera audio. So I'm going to click OK there. I'm going to let that do its job. It's going to process it. It's going to take a few minutes. I'll get back and we'll see the results. All right, well, I thought it was done, but it's going again. So there it is. All right, let's see what happened here. Here's the multicam that it created. So I'm going to move it out to its own entity. And let's bring this over. Now that's just a sequence. Or that's the multi-camera timeline thing. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but we need to create a sequence out of it. All right, so that created, I think I paused, but I dragged this over. That created a new sequence. That's now my multicam sequence. Or this was probably the new one that was created. That's what I dragged. This is the new one that was created. You can rewind and see what actually happened. I'm going to make that nice and big. And now you can see we've only got 1 camera source here, but that's because the other ones are hidden. So if I click on this button, if you don't see that button, click this plus sign over here. It will let you, pick some editor buttons, and you want to pick this one, which is the multicam editor. And so that shows this up over here. So now, when I edit, we can just hit play here, and we can switch between cameras as we go. I'm not doing this. I'm doing this in random order here. I'm not following the conversation. But you can see that automatically did the edits for me. So as I scroll back through, it's the right side here is the output. So it's recorded or remembered the cuts, and it's going through those cuts. So I'm going to back that out because I don't want to do that yet. First thing I want to do is I need to get my audio lined up. So now I'm going to bring in my H6 timeline. And I am going to put it in here. And now I'm going to grab these, and I am going to sync them again. And this is where Adobe tends to fail me. So we'll see if this works. Sometimes I have to go and find the 3 claps to line it up. So I'm going to do the same thing, synchronize based on audio track channel 1, and click OK. And we'll see if it lines those things up. It does it pretty quickly, so I'm not going to pause the video here just so we can see what happened in real time together. And could not synchronize. 1 or more clips in the search because for some reason Adobe does not like to sync my H6 audio to my video tracks, and that just might be something I just haven't figured out yet. So now I'm going to zoom in, and I got to go listen to this audio, and I got to go find where the claps are. So I'm going to do that now, and then I'll talk about it. All right, so you can probably see by the clock that it's been a while. I had to take some phone calls and do some other stuff, so I've been paused for a while here. I've kind of lost train of thought, but I think I was looking for the claps. And so on the video track, it's fairly easy to find the tracks. Now, recall when I brought this audio track in right here, which is the H6 audio, I put it on a track with video and audio. So if you get this problem where all of a sudden you have no video, you're like, where's my video? It's because your audio has a video layer that's covering up your actual 5-camera edit video. So that's why I'm not getting an output from one of these cameras over here, is because this timeline, which is this guy, the audio is higher. So you can either unlink those, you can hide that track, or you can unlink it and then just delete the audio from it, and so, or the video, I'm sorry. And so now that's gone. It doesn't matter if this is on or not. And now I'm going to see my, whatever camera is here is going to show up in my output over here based on what I choose from. So the next thing I was going to do is look for those claps. And you just saw him clap there. So you can use the video as a reference for the claps. So we'll zoom in and we'll mark those claps. And I can show you what the waveform looks like. So there it is. It's a very distinct waveform. Oh shoot, what happened there? Maybe I went too far. There they are. So you can usually call out the claps. They're straight spikes up and then a curve down. It's a very pretty distinct, and so that's what we're going to use to line up the video. Now remember, this video here, or this audio video combo here, these two tracks, V1 and A1, they came in together from our multi-camera. They are up here. They are all synced up. Adobe did a great job of syncing those up. You can see that he's clapping up in the left or upper left-hand corner here and clapping down here on that different camera angle. So we know for sure those two camera angles are synced up because they're moving together. And the reason we're seeing it over here is because this is the output showing up over here. So right now I'm just assuming that these other two are synced up as well with this, and we'll find that out later, I guess, as a consequence. So what I'm going to do is, as I'm zoomed so far in that I can only move one frame at a time. So I'm going to cut just before I'm going to hit C, or you could grab your cut tool, your razor tool, and I'm going to just cut this guy right here. I'm going to hit V to change back to a pointer, and I'm going to just delete there. I can go back and get that stuff. This just makes it easy for me to, I could set a marker or something, but this just makes it easy for me to find that point. And then later I can go and extend it back once I've got everything synced up, and you'll see me do that. So now I need to find that these same marks on the audio track. And what I tend to do is go and look for, peaks like this. Now remember, I don't have a video reference to this, so I'm just going to guess that right about in here, I might see that particular waveform. So let's zoom in. I'll hit plus to zoom in, and I am not seeing that waveform there. And so for time, I'm going to pause this and do a little research, and I'll be back. All right, so I'm back. We'll try this again. Again, just skimming the peaks, because usually a clap is going to give you a nice strong peak. Let's zoom in, and I'm using the bar. That makes it hard. Let's do the plus sign, and let's look right in here, and there they are. So sometimes tough to find, but that's your three triangle-like looking claps. And so I'm going to zoom all the way into the beginning of that first clap, and I am going to cut it with C. I'll cut, then V to get my pointer back. I'll delete that, and now I can zoom out. And now both of these are happening. Both of these start right at that cut. So I'll just move it right to the beginning of the timeline. I'll move this right to the beginning of the timeline. That should match those two up. I'm going to move this audio track up one, just so that they're closer together. And now I'll zoom in. And you can see that my timelines are pretty close. And I think this is why Adobe struggles to line these up is, well, no, these line up pretty closely. So I'm not sure why Adobe is struggling to line those up. But if we zoom down, you can start to see, like if we come into here and zoom in, you can see that, a lot of things are mimicking each other, so they seem to be synced up throughout. And this stuff, it might be room noise that's showing up that's not showing up in the microphones, and that's why it's there and not here. But anyway, I've got my audio and video synced up. So my H6 track is the audio 2. The audio 1 is my camera microphone, which we chose to be, audio source of one of the cameras. So I'm going to mute that guy because I don't want to hear that. I'll play it. So I'm doing this over a remote connection, believe it or not, so it's not being captured real time. So some of the timing might be off. The synchronizing might be because of that remote delay. Might be the issue. But I know it's synced up because of the waveforms. So I'll hit play, and you'll see him talking. So we'll see if that clap came in. Hopefully that records on the audio. But that clap came through. You saw the meter go up. It all happened at the right time. And then, so this would be the open air mics.
There we go. All right. So let's get.
So that's, if you heard that, that's room audio as opposed to a direct microphone. And this is the room audio of one of the cameras, and this is my 6 different microphones all in one track. I'm not sure if I beat that horse to death or not, but that's hopefully I made it understandable. Now there's one more thing I like to do, and that is, because when I'm editing here, now you could start editing and you could hit play here and you could start switching between your cameras. You can click on the different angles, or you can press the keyboard 1 for this angle, 2, 3, and 4 for this angle, and 5 if there was a 5 or a 6, but and that would allow you to switch. But with these waveforms, I can't see which microphone is talking because they're all summed into one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and grab my H6 audio tracks, and I'm actually going to bring them in to this. So I'll add them one at a time, and I'm going to just zoom this down. And so this is just going to be for reference. And again, I'm going to have to make more tracks by clicking to the bottom. But I'm going to use this for reference so I know who's talking ahead of time and which track I can use. So I've got all these tracks in. And so now I need to go and find the clap on this and line this up. So I'll go and do that right now. All right, so I've zoomed in here. These are my 4 tracks I brought in. Again, I lined them up. They're in line with each other because the zoom automatically lines them up. And you can see as I start to zoom in, that's going to be the claps right there. So I'm going to hit the plus sign to zoom in. There's my clap waveforms on each of the microphones. It looks like they might be, delayed by a little bit, but so I'm going to zoom in. Get this track. So now I'm going to select these 3 tracks. I'm going to hit Control K, which is going to cut those 3 tracks. I will delete all of them, and then I'm going to delete the other side. And then I'll zoom out, and I'll drag this back to the beginning. And now we should be able to go back to the beginning and zoom in. I'll hit plus, and there's my claps all lined up on all the different tracks. Now again, let me move this one down. Let's see, let me adjust this up so I've got more room. I'm just going to bring a track in here just to create a new track, and then I'm going to delete it, and then I'm going to drag these 4 all down so that there's a separation. Now, so this track is my camera audio. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to mute it out. I want to use my composite. This track here is actually these microphones all embedded in one track, and the reason you do that is because now you can add processing to the entire track, and I'll talk about that in a bit, even after your cuts and stuff. But this is with my audio here, and so these are my individual microphones, which I know are lined up. And so now when I'm editing, as this thing is playing, I'm just going to hit the play here, and as this thing is moving across, now I can see that while this is moving across, I can look ahead and say, hey, this microphone, whoever this is talking, and I have to line these microphones up to who's, which is which. But once I know that, I can look ahead and be ready to switch to this camera angle based on the knowledge that this guy is going to start talking because he's got some audio coming up. So let's find out who that is.
Line us up. Okay.
So whoever just said okay, it's not showing up here again because I'm working remotely. But I would figure out who said okay, and then I would know that that's the person to go to with the edit based on their volume. So let's see if I can find one where it's obvious that somebody is talking by themselves. So here it looks like there's an area that somebody's talking by themselves.
Brilliant. So Joe Newcomer.
So that's Frank talking. That's this guy. That's going to be his track. So I know that whenever I see a waveform coming up there, that I'm going to want to switch to a camera angle that has him. And then whoever this guy is, as this one guy comes up, I'm going to switch to them. So again, beating a dead horse, but hopefully you get it, that I can now use these tracks, which I'm going to mute out. I don't want them to be a part of my export, but I want them there for reference so I can look ahead as I'm editing real time and switch cameras real time based on what's coming ahead. So the other caveat to this setup is that if you make an edit, say I want to cut, I want to cut from this section to here. If there's some reason that I wanted to cut this area out, you want to do it to everything. So that will keep everything synced up. So you would just highlight them all, hit Control K, go back to here, hit Control K, and now if I wanted to pull that section out, I do this one, which extracts it. You see the arrow up is pulling the piece out, and then it's going to squeeze the two sides together. So now I'm going to have a discontinuity, which we may not be able to see. It's a small jump there, depending on which angle you were looking at. But everything is still in sync. This side is still in sync, and this side is still in sync. But the reason we do a composite track here is so that I can go back to my composite track, which is the it's going to be under my timelines, my Zoom H6 timeline, and now I can process these. If I want to add gain, if I find that this guy or this guy, one of my microphones needs to add gain. If I've done an edit here and I've done a bunch of other edits, now I have to go to each single one, or I have to select the entire track and do my adjustments, and things are not going to line up or not be easy to work with because I might have accidentally put something in this one that I didn't put in this one. It's kind of confusing to explain, but let me do this. I'll select this one here. Remember this, we cut this, so now this is the same guy talking, but it's two different tracks. If I go to my effects panel and I put a compression. If I put a compression on there, a single band compressor, and I put it on him, now it's showing up in the effects, or it should show up in the effects, I would think. I don't know if I got it in there. I'll just draw it in like that. Now it's in there. So if I change him to give him some gain there so that he's louder, it's going to only affect this one. It's not going to affect this one. So now I have to go to this one, and now notice the effect is gone. So now I have to go and add the effect to this one. And you can see if I had a ton of little edits, I would have to go to each individual. If I had a cut there and a cut there, and a cut there. Let's do that again. Control K, cut there. So now I have to go to each one of these segments, and add that compression. It's there now because it was there before the cut, but if I was adding it after the fact like I just did, it wouldn't have been there, and I'd have to go to each one and add it. So that's a pain. I'm going to back those changes out. I think that's back to the beginning. So that's where I can just go into this track. I can just double click on it, which is going to just take me back to that Zoom H6 track. And now, no matter where I've cut that track in the other one, because I've pulled this entire thing in, I can just add that, even though I've made cuts on this one. So I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to add this cut. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place because I'm just doing this live. I'm going to go back to here and cut. And so I'm going to take this section out again, right? And that pushed these pieces together. So now we have a discontinuity here. But I can go back to the source by double clicking or just going to the source. That discontinuity is not here. It's just taking this track in and cutting it out once it's in there. But so I can now still add the single band compressor to that individual track, and it's there for the whole thing, and it's going to be there for the whole thing in this thing, because the underlying data for these two different tracks is dependent on this one long track, which hasn't been edited at this level. At this level, it's been edited, but that's fine. But my changes, they won't show up on this screen, in here. But the underlying, the underlying audio. If I go back to my H6, the underlying audio, and I'm pointing to these guys, but really it's this track that is the underlying track. So I probably got very confusing there. Sorry again. Obviously going to have to redo this video, which will probably never happen. But you know, the same concept. I was pointing here. I should have been pointing here that you know, the underlying track for this guy is these 6 guys, and so you know, shoot. I got to go back to my history here. The cut that happened here in the missing piece is somewhere in this H6 somewhere, but it doesn't matter because I'm applying the track, the concept, the change to this entire track, which shows up here and here. It doesn't matter. This thing just refers back to that entire solid track. So I'm again beating a dead horse. Not sure if it came through. I'll probably have to watch it to understand. But anyway, now I can go and do my edits and not have to worry about you know, making a single change to an audio track, because I later discovered that a guy was too quiet, and not having to change everybody. So ultimately, to recap, this is my video track. I'm going to do editing, and you know, real-time editing, where I just hit play. I'm going to watch these tracks here. I see that Frank's talking, so you know, I can see that that's happening, and then I'll just scoot ahead. You know, and as this plays, I can see that we're coming up to this guy's talking, so I can pick this guy, and it's actually somebody, yeah, it's right here. So as this comes up, you know, I can see that we're going to need to do a camera angle change based on this guy's going to say something. So if this guy's angle is here, you know, we can probably go to him. I'm guessing that that's going to be the Donnie cam. We'll see if he talks. Say he laughs, so we can go to him and then come back just for that short period of time. And when I hit stop, you'll see that the edits were automated when I made the change from one camera to the other. Adobe did the automatic cuts in the camera angle. So this is the 5 camera angles, this track up here. This is the audio track that's open air from one of those cameras that I'm not going to use. I'm muting it out. This is my composite of my 6 underlying audio tracks, which I can just add one single element to underneath it. And these down here are just for my visual reference, and that's why they're muted. So I can export like this, and I'll get just this audio and this composite video, which is the multi-camera angles. So not sure if that was pretty complex. Could probably get that down to about 10 minutes if I redid it, but you know, time is life right now. So anyway, Terry Caliendo, Dedicated Managers. I'm going to pull up the website again. That's the Zoom H6. This is Dedicated Managers. Visit us at dedicatedmanagers.com if you need any help, or if you need us to do anything for you. Take care and have a great day. We're glad to help you in any technology needs that you might need.